Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the simple workforce management software for hospitality teams. RotaCloud lets you create and share rotas, record attendance, and manage your team's annual leave, all in less time than it takes to make a brew. It can also make life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request holiday, and even pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Simon Numphud, Managing Director of AA Media and all-round hospitality champion. Coming up on today's show, Simon aims for a bizarre world record.
When you're eating your 150th cooked breakfast of the year.
Phil speaks the truth. There's always a time and a place for a flambé. And Simon reveals a unique experience from his inspecting days.
I have had one ghostly experience staying in a hotel.
All that and so much more as Simon chats us through his brilliant journey so far. Simon has a superb story with more than a few anecdotes throughout our chat, all told with charm and humour. So please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tell everyone you know. Enjoy. And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to Simon Numphud.
Hi there, Phil.
How are you?
I'm great, thanks. I'm glad it's Friday. Been a long week.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, absolutely. There used to be a show called, it was TFI Friday, wasn't it? And it's TGI Fridays was the restaurant chain.
Yeah, so TGI Friday is often, actually, I was speaking to someone about that recently, it's often a lot of people's first experience of the restaurant back in the day was a TGI Fridays.
Yeah, well, they got an awful lot right, I have to say. Their service was great, cocktails were amazing, food was, perfectly approachable, I think is probably the word.
Completely agree, and I think they had that. They had a really good customer experience, and they're very consistent about that in terms of how they engaged with guests. They crouched down to take the order, if you remember that.
That's
and,
right. Yeah.
Really good product knowledge, as you say. Used to make really good cocktails, and it was a good experience. And it was always a good experience.
Yeah, absolutely. How have we even got talking about that so soon? 1 minute down and we've covered off TGI Fridays.
Well, I was about to.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is all down to me, it has to be said. This is about the fourth attempt that we've tried to make this conversation happen. So I'm absolutely delighted to finally have you on the show.
Yeah, great to be here. And yeah, I know we've had a few false starts, but yeah, we're finally here.
Yeah, absolutely. So just tell the world what it is that you do.
Right, so I'm managing director of AA Media. So first and foremost, our primary business is to run accreditation schemes in the UK. So people will be familiar with the AA as an automobile association formed in 1905. But what many people don't realise is that we started inspecting hotels in 1908, believe it or not, only 3 years after the AA.
You weren't there though at that time?
No, I wasn't, no.
Not been there that long.
No, not that. I've been in the AA for quite some time, 25 years, but not that long, no. So, so we started inspecting in 1908, and actually it was the company secretary at the time, Stenson Cook, who actually created the star rating scheme as we know it today. So he created a star rating scheme back in 1912, and he based that on brandy classification, which used to be 1 to 3 stars, and that's actually how the star rating was born. So the AA is the actual originators of the star rating scheme that's been widely adopted globally now. So it's a fantastic story, and obviously the AA enjoys an incredible rich history and heritage of working with hospitality, which is a real privilege for me to have the responsibility of carrying that forward.
Yeah, bless you. And I was going to say, steady on, Simon. We don't want this turning into an educational podcast because that was a wonderful piece of education to kick things off. I had no idea that was the kind of the rich heritage dating back that long, but also where the origins of the actual star rating system that we still pretty much use today. That's remarkable.
Yeah, it is quite remarkable. So obviously back in 2008, we celebrated our centenary, and last year we reached the milestone of 115 years of working with hospitality. So as I said, it's an incredible privilege to be able to do that. So yes, we run accreditation schemes in the UK under the AA brand, and we also operate under license and contract with Visit England schemes from that point of view. So accreditation being the biggest part of our business. We have two other parts of the business. We're a publisher, so we still publish quite a lot of publications, predominantly in the driving arena. So I'm sure you've probably come across roadmaps and atlases. So we still do 12 different versions of the atlas for the UK market. We do a range of European mapping, various driving titles such as Highway Code and Theory Test, and we do a number of lifestyle titles. So we still produce a camping and caravanning guide, which is best-selling caravanning camping guide, and we still produce our AA restaurant guide, to name a few. And then we do a range of AA branded car merchandising, in-car product under the AA brand, and we operate a small AA travel shop at Folkestone at the Eurotunnel terminal.
Right, so you've not got a lot going on then. This does this all fall under your banner as the media, as it were?
Yes, it does. Yeah, those
Right.
three key components of the business. So yeah.
Yeah, crikey! I had no idea you had all of that going on. That's quite remarkable.
Yeah, it's a lovely, diverse business to run, full of great people. That's what makes up our business. So, yeah, as I said, it's a privilege and an honour to be part of it.
Splendid. Right, well, and we'll come back to that in the fullness of our discussion, I am sure, to find out what's going on in your world at the moment. But I want you to take us all the way back to the beginning of your career, because obviously you're still very, very much connected to the hospitality industry at the moment. But, how did you even get started with that kind of, I suppose, career direction in mind?
Yeah, I guess it's probably a bit of luck and fate, to be honest, Phil. I mean, I probably I'm from Bournemouth originally. I'll be honest, it didn't do as well as expected at school. Didn't really know what I wanted to do when I left school. And careers advice back then was quite basic, I'll be honest. So it was like, well, what does your dad do? My father used to be a Hoffman presser, a dry cleaner. And I said, I definitely don't want to do that because I knew how hard my dad worked. Not that I wasn't keen on hard work, but it was very hard. My sister at the time, one of my sisters was a head receptionist in a hotel in Bournemouth. And so the sort of career advisor said, well, why don't you try catering college? So I said, oh, okay, then. And I ended up at Bournemouth College, for catering college, doing a 2-year, which was then called a National Diploma in Hotel and Catering and Institutional Operations, very long title from that point of view. So 2-year course, which is very craft orientated. So it's, for those that remember, it's probably equivalent to the old City and Guilds 706 1 and 2 from that point of view. So very training restaurant, kitchen, front of house, and very, service detailed.
So a bit of kind of theoretical classroom stuff, but kind of then backed up by some practical, actually
Totally.
out in the field kind of stuff, as it were.
Totally. So that was a 2-year course, and I really loved it. And actually, what was really defining for me then, and it's still Bournemouth still do this, is that they send all their students to France for a 6-month placement as part of that 2-year program. So I found myself when I was 17 working in a Relais Chateau property with 1 Michelin star in the Loire Valley of all places.
Nice.
Um,
What a
so
start that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Tremendously hard work. Used to get up with used to be ferried in with the head chef because the head chef could drive because we staff accommodation was the other side of Loire. So it was a bit of a journey in the morning. So started really early, finished really late, worked 6 days a week for those 6 months. But I came back fairly fluent in French and technically very strong. It taught me a lot about the sort of technicalities of food service in particular and very standards focused. And I really, looking back at that time, whilst it was incredibly hard in terms of training, I really loved it. And I think that was really my epiphany moment of actually falling in love with hospitality and thinking, actually, I've become quite good at this from someone that had no skills to someone that could, I'm showing my age now, but could carve and flambe and tell you about 25 cheeses off a trolley and serve it to a high standard. It gave me a lot of confidence. And I fell in love with, the engagement that serving people gives you in hospitality, and there's a real buzz to that.
Yeah, you might say you're showing your age, but I would say there's always a time and a place for a flambe and a carvery. A carvery, that's not what I mean, a carving.
Yeah.
Because, these are skills. They're absolutely skills. And, not to be underestimated, I think.
Oh no, there's a lot of. I mean, it's like anything, but you see, if you go to a Ritz or somewhere that will still do Gueridon service, they make it look so easy, but it's not easy to do it in a very fluent and professional way, slick way, and really quickly. So obviously you don't lose the heat of the food, etc. There is a real art and skill to it. So I admire any of those sort of old skills, but take years to sort of build up.
Yeah, I suppose in some ways you were 17 years old when you did your 6 months in France.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was still quite young, I guess. But that epiphany moment that you had whereby you started to feel like, yeah, this is my direction. This is what I want to do. Do you think that came about because some of us just don't get on particularly well at school because, I don't know, maybe it's too generalist, maybe it's too boring, maybe we haven't found a thing that ignites us, but actually what happens when you do find the thing that ignites you is that learning becomes way easier.
Definitely. I think probably I wasn't probably reflecting back. I probably wasn't that great at exams, and that's probably why I didn't do so well at school. But then when I got to catering college, which was a different kind of learning, it was on the job and a lot of research. There was a lot of project work at college, more presentations than just a straightforward exam. I tended to do a lot better in that, and I guess I enjoyed learning more than I did at school. To be honest, it was more interesting. It was more engaging for me in terms of that vehicle and that platform at the time, and had some really, not that my teachers at school were poor in any way, but I just found the whole sort of teaching method at catering college to be more engaging and to be more fun.
Yeah, totally half the battle, I think, is finding that mechanism that where
Yeah.
it gets the best out of you in the learning environment.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I have very fond memories of Bournemouth, and I met the principal at Bournemouth. I mean, the college I went to it's just been knocked down. They're rebuilding it, and they're doing a massive, fantastic new project, and I can't wait to go back and see it once it's built. It's a 3 year project, I think, from
Right.
memory.
Well, that's good to hear that it's being knocked down to be rebuilt as a college and not turned into flats or
Oh,
whatever it is.
absolutely, because it is prime real estate, because it's right in the centre of Bournemouth, actually, Bournemouth College, and although they have another campus in Poole, but yeah, I'm really excited to see. And they're going to really invest in their catering facilities, so that's quite exciting.
Yeah, I know that sounds great. Great that investment's still there in the education where it's needed for
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, from there, what happened next?
Well, so my instinct was I've done 2 years, I'll go and work in a hotel. That was kind of my sort of my my really detailed foresight into what I was going to do, and it was actually my food and beverage lecturer that said to me, have you considered about going on and doing a degree? And my instant reaction was that I'm not brave enough to do a degree. And he said, well, I think you are, and I think you'd really enjoy it and get a lot out of it. So actually, it was through that encouragement that I actually applied to Oxford Polytechnic at the time, which was offering a modular style degree course, a 4 year course in hotel management. I applied and I got in. So,
Right.
so rather unusually, I guess, I ended up doing 6 years of hospitality education, which is not your classic route, I guess. And again, it wasn't planned at all. So yeah, I ended up going to Oxford Poly, the Headington site, which is still there, spending 4 years there with a year out in industry.
Right. Yeah. You're right. I mean, I think normally 6 years is one away from a PhD, isn't it?
Yes. I think your maths is right there, yeah.
Yeah. Well, still time. There's still time. Dr. Simon, I can see it now. Yeah. So, did you notice a step up at that point in terms of the learning experience that you had at Bournemouth versus going to Oxford Polytechnic
Yeah.
and the degree level, as it were?
From an academic point of view, without question, there was a clear step up in terms of the level of background reading and understanding, and the detail and the much more comprehensiveness of writing papers, to satisfy that learning. So that was probably my biggest sort of step up. However, from a technical side, because Oxford Polytechnic at the time had a fantastic training restaurant there, amazing kitchens actually. So there was it was quite heavily craft orientated at the same time. I was completely the other end of the spectrum in terms of technically, in terms of in the kitchen and restaurant service. I was essentially 2 years plus industry experience ahead of most of my colleagues at the time. Just for most of them, some of them had worked in hospitality, but for most of my colleagues, fellow students, they'd never been in a kitchen, they'd never held a knife, they'd never put a chef's jacket on, never served in a restaurant. So that was completely alien to them, where it wasn't for me.
Yeah. Really interesting experience, though, I would imagine. And then from completion of your studies, how did you take that forward?
Well, I was very lucky, I guess, to a certain extent, that I did, again, all the students do a year out in industry. I did my year out at the Feathers in Woodstock, it's just outside of Oxford, a lovely hotel. And I actually ended up working there in my third and fourth year as well, having gained such a great relationship there. And I even had living accommodation for years 3 and 4. So I used to basically go back into Oxford for my lectures from that point of view. And I graduated in 91, which was obviously, as you remember, the graduate placements were being deferred for a couple of years, deep recession. And actually, it was just fortuitous at the time that the head chef of the Feathers and the restaurant manager. So as Sonia Kidney and Leo Brook Little were being backed by the owner of the Feathers, who had sold the Feathers, that was Gordon Campbell Gray, into creating a brand new restaurant in the Cotswolds in Moreton Marsh called the Marsh Goose. So I naturally went with them and opened up the Marsh Goose with them. So went straight into a brand new restaurant.
Right, yeah. And you graduated in 1991. I was going to say you don't look old enough to have graduated in 1991.
That's very kind of you.
Yeah, are you sure about that? Yeah, yeah. No, I'm sure you are.
Yeah,
But
perhaps a bit of my Thai genes are helping me there. So
right,
my father's Thai. And he's 92 now, and he doesn't
wow,
really look older than 75. To be honest, he
right.
looks incredibly well. So maybe I've
Wow.
got my dad to thank for that.
I can only hope. Can only hope. No, that's great. Yeah, so it kicked off then, I suppose, in fully earnest style in this new restaurant. How did it map out from there?
Yeah, so Marsh Goose was really a good experience because that sharp end of opening a brand new restaurant. There was only 4 or 5 of us to begin with. We had a deli as well, so and you did everything. We cooked, we served in the deli, we served in a restaurant. So it's very very hands on. But within the first couple of years, it was it got a really good following and very strong success from that point of view. So I really enjoyed my time there. But at that point, I'd kind of worked with Sonia and Leo for, oh gosh, probably 5 years at that point. So it was time to probably just do something different and move on. So my next job was at a place called the Beetle and Wedge in Molesford, which is between Oxford and Reading on the River Thames. Lovely property, which had a small hotel with about 12 bedrooms, a conservatory restaurant, which was, you could say, fine dining. And then they had a lovely boathouse restaurant with a real charcoal grill. Very simple but really high quality menu. Probably do about 80 or 90 covers inside. But in the summer, you'd do more than double that.
Yeah,
And because it was a really good spot from that. Run by a couple called Kate and Richard Smith. And Kate was a really good advocate for, putting me through some wine exams because she's very passionate about wine. And yeah, there I learned to run a much bigger restaurant essentially, and develop my sort of wine knowledge essentially.
yeah. I suppose a lot of this as well has to do with the people that you work for, right? In terms
Yes.
of their willingness to push you, their willingness to support you as well. So your continued learning. It sounds like you absolutely had that there.
Yeah, definitely. I think in an odd sort of way, whilst mentoring wasn't a thing then, they were really someone I looked up to and helped me develop and encouraged me to develop, in my career, and encouraged me to keep on learning, which I think is a big thing when you're finding your way in your early part of your career, is to try and be a sponge and learn as much as possible, because I'm a great believer. It doesn't matter how old you are and how experienced you are. Ultimately, every day is a school day, and you'll learn something new every single day. And hospitality in particular. If you think about wine and food, they're vast subjects, and you'll never
Yeah,
know everything anyway. So yeah, it was good, and and again, it just continued my love for, running a restaurant, the buzz of service, loving people. Yeah, all of those things that I really liked.
yeah. So you're absolutely 100% hook, line, and sinker in now. There, you like you are
Yes.
on the path.
Yeah.
And how long were you at that place for?
A couple of years. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And what happened next? Where did you head after
Yeah.
that?
Again, time to move on. Really, just through, again, there wasn't really any way to develop further in terms of a higher role. So I was again looking to sort of move on, and I actually joined a hotel called Hollington House, which used to be just outside of Newbury, near Highclere Castle, and that was run by a really interesting couple called John and Penny Guy, and they had the first Relais Chateau property in Australia, a place called Burnham Beeches in Melbourne. And they'd come over in the 90s to educate their 3 children, landed in Oxford, and John was a very entrepreneurial individual and got itchy feet, and he wanted to run another hotel. So he came across Hollington House. It was originally built in 1905, from memory, 1904, I think it was, with Gertrude Jekyll Gardens, was being previously run as a Bupa nursing home. Fell in love with it, brought it in the downturn, and converted it into a country house hotel.
As you do.
As you do, 26 keys, 26 acres of gardens, and had a lovely kitchen garden. And I joined them originally as F&B manager, and then very quickly promoted to become general manager. So, and that was an incredible time in terms of that sort of whole country house vibe. It was a hotel of a very high standard, had 3 red stars, had 3 rosettes. We had a great chef. It was a great time. Very, very hands on. And again, just in terms of continuing my love for sort of wine and food, we had one of the largest Australian wine lists. Well, we had the largest Australian wine list in the country because of John and Penny. We used to buy wines direct from Sydney and Melbourne and ship them over ourselves. So we had over 100 Australian ports on our list. We had Penfolds Grange going back to the 60s. We had Henschke. We had all the classic names. So it was an amazing cellar to work with. So yeah, that was a really interesting time.
One of the best Chardonnays I've ever had in my life comes from Australia.
Which one?
I think it's Soderbergh.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah, we had it on the. Oh God, this is going to make me sound really up my own backside, but we had it on the tasting menu at the Fat Duck.
Oh.
Not normally a wine that I would have perhaps gone for, but I remember this being just the most creamy, buttery, wonderful thing that ever existed. And I then got a few bottles of it in Household Street to have as our house wine, as it were. Yep. And then they stopped exporting it because it became far too popular in Australia itself.
Oh, wow.
So
okay. Yeah. Well, because we had such an incredible wine list, we used to do lots and lots of wine dinners, and winemakers used to come over and host those. So that was incredibly informative as well, to actually meet a lot of the winemakers from Australia and New Zealand, and people like Willie Oppitz from Austria, who's very famous for making his Trockenbeer and Auslese dessert wine. So yeah, that was really interesting to see that at the time.
I can only imagine. I mean, I think if you got even the tiniest bit of interest in food and drink, when the actual maker / producer comes in and talks to you about it, I don't know, just for me that always just sends the interest level through the roof.
Yeah, it does, and you can see their passion for the craft, and also I think it's really interesting understanding and learning people's stories and narratives about how they got into wine business, how do they start growing vineyards, and all the different stories that brings and unfolds.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was your first GM appointment, as it
were.
Yeah. How old were you at this point?
Oh gosh, I must have been 20, 26, 27.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's quite young. I mean, I know I've had a few people on the show who've talked about, the setting this aspiration of becoming a GM before you're 30 type thing, which is, it's a dangerous aspiration to set because, if you don't make it, I don't know, do you feel like that's the end of your career or whatever? But 26 is still quite young.
Yeah, very young.
How did you have a sense of that at the time, in terms of, wow, I'm being given an opportunity like this?
No, I guess you don't when you're in the moment. You just seize the opportunity and you roll with it. I don't actually think about age per se. It was just as always when you're working for a proprietor-driven property, I think that the strength comes in the depth of relationship you have with the owners, and I had a really, really good, well, this was a classic. I remember going for my interview at Hollington, and I ended up chatting to John and Penny for 6 hours, but it only felt like an hour.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know at the time is that they'd been to the Beaten and Wedge, and that they'd seen me operate and serve, etc. Obviously, I guess they liked what they saw, but we just hit it off. And again, it was that just meeting of personalities and styles, and we led from there. And I've always been, I guess, in my style, quite flexible, quite pragmatic, and I think that served me quite well because John was very entrepreneurial, always coming up with different ideas, and let's do this, let's do that, let's build a swimming pool, lots of different things, and that was quite exciting, from that point of view. So
Yeah, absolutely. Also kind of highlighting again the importance of that relationship in terms of when you get each other,
totally.
they trust you to do the job, and you trust them to have your best interest at heart and the best interest of the property and the team. Sparks can fly. Amazing things can happen.
It does, and I think it's really fundamental because you both got to you both want to go in the same direction at the end of the day, don't you? So,
Mm,
and yeah, at the end of the day, if you are rowing in the same direction, it's quite easy actually. It's when you're trying to go different ways that's where the friction and the challenges become.
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's really, I see lots of businesses, and it's really, whether it's the chef with management or chef with the owners or the GM with owners, that relationship is really fundamental to making sure you have a successful business.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened next?
I'll be honest. I'd been working there for I think just under 3 years, and it was pretty full on. I mean, you had to be 110% committed to the job. We had our own in-house laundry, small tight team, and to a degree, you were rolling your sleeves up quite a lot of a day. So I guess I was pretty exhausted. It was coming to the time of thinking about starting a family, and I thought to myself, I'm not sure if the two can coexist here. And I thought it's time for a change, regrettably, because I'd loved my time at Hollington. So I decided to, again, sort of look to move on, giving John and Penny, sort of fair notice about what I wanted to do. And the AA job came up as a hotel and restaurant inspector, actually. And bear in mind, this is pre-internet. This is, all the job adverts from the caterer.
I remember that as well. It's fine. Yeah, that's not
And
just an age thing.
so I applied and actually got an interview, which I wasn't expecting because I knew there was always a high demand for that job. I got in, got on really well. I was interviewed by a guy called David Young, who used to be the chief hotel inspector at the time. Got on really well with David, and accepted the job. I mean, it was a bit of a pivot moment because in reality, I took a quite a substantial pay cut to move to that role, but I was moving to a different lifestyle of not working 6 days a week, but a lot of travel at the same time. So, and I thought, well, look, I'll do that for a couple of years, see where it takes me, and move on from there. Really,
And you're still waiting to move on from there.
still waiting to move on. Yeah, so 25 years later.
Goodness, yeah. You
Yeah.
mentioned there that it was a high demand job at the time, as in, and so, was it high demand? Is that the words? A very popular job for hotel GMs to aspire to go into. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's always been
It's
a
interesting because, well, I think the perception is, and actually over the many, many years I've interviewed people for roles within the AA, everyone says, and GMs, chefs, food and beverage managers, housekeepers, they said, oh, being an AA inspector has always been my dream job.
right?
It's kind of it's one of the things that resonate. It seems to have this perception that it's a job I'd love to do. And actually, when we interview people, I actually, and I say this, I paint a slightly dark picture about the role because it's not as glamorous as most people think it is. So I paint the reality of what the job entails just to make sure that people are going into the role with their eyes wide open about it's a different lifestyle, but there are many great things about the role, but it's quite an insular role. You have to do a lot of traveling. You have to do a lot of eating, which on the face value, people say, oh, you get paid to go and eat out. That's a wonderful job, but you do that over a long period of time. Actually, that you have to be very disciplined about that. And, when you're eating, not that I do that level of visits now, but when you're eating your 150th cooked breakfast of the year, after your 175th dinner and 35 afternoon teas, room service, etc., it takes a shine off a little bit in terms of it's a bit like, oh, you travel for work, that must be wonderful. For most people that travel for work, all they do is see the inside of a hotel room if they're lucky, and they're
Yeah.
on another flight or another train, etc. It's not as glamorous as you think, as ever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it reminds me of being on ships, actually, as an officer.
Yes.
We were lucky enough to get the same menu that passengers got,
Mm.
which is amazing when you first come on board, and it's a new experience. But by the end of your 6 month contract, when it's captain's gala dinner night and you go into the mess and all that's on in there is lobster thermidor, ribeye steak, beef Wellington, and all you're really really wanting is just a piece of fish and a salad or something like that. It sounds really, it's a proper privilege, of course, to be in that position, but at the same time, the line that I always had in my head was, if you're getting bored by the prospect of lobster thermidor, it's time to get off.
Absolutely. And the odd thing is, so, if you ask my kids what I do for a living, they just think I go out for lunch.
Yeah. I mean, not strictly untrue, but yeah,
Well, yeah, there is a degree of fact in there, but I don't always have lunch. But yeah, the perception is that's all I do. But yeah.
yeah. I suppose part of that process is then you'll have to make sure that if you're having to eat all of these meals, you have to also test out the gym facilities in these places rigorously.
Well, yeah, I've got better as I've got older about exercise, but yeah, I've been very blessed with a fortunate metabolism that that I seem to be able to eat quite well without it sort of having too much of an impact. But yeah,
Right.
but
Well, we're back
it
to
is
these genes again.
it is important to exercise without question.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you and I spoke about you coming on the show to tell your story, I had grand ideas in my head that I was going to call this episode "Confessions of an AA Inspector" because it kind of had to be. So I'm just going to go straight in. We'll carry on with your journey because obviously you've been there 25 years and you didn't start as an inspector and then just wake up as the MD one day, I'm sure. But yeah, any stories from your time, and you don't have to name places, people, or anything like that. Make it as vague as you wish. But
Oh,
anywhere, any
yeah,
things where you're just like, wow, that's just incredible that happened.
yeah. You could write a book on this stuff, really, to be
Go right
honest.
ahead.
but but yeah, and there's so many funny stories through to whether it's sitting in a restaurant on one of the islands, so obviously quite a small community, and hearing a voice boom from the kitchen, the AA restaurant inspector's here, it's a almost comical situation to that through to I have had one ghostly experience staying in a hotel.
As in supernatural ghosty.
Yeah, I have actually, believe it or not. I don't kind of believe in that kind of stuff, but yeah, I definitely felt a presence in one of the B&Bs I stayed at on the south coast once, which stayed up all night after that
Yeah.
with all the lights on. But yeah, maybe it was real, maybe it wasn't real, but I still remember it to this day. In that respect, you meet so many incredible people in our industry, and I think all the different characters and seeing their level of commitment and devotion to their property or their job is quite amazing. And actually, one of the beauties of our job is I get to see properties develop over years and over decades. I have, and it's great to see that journey from, a hotel that was originally 9 bedrooms to then now it's 130 bedrooms with a full blown spa and multiple restaurants. It's amazing to see the journeys that some of those businesses have been on. It's been an absolute privilege to eat and experience cooking at its very best in chefs where they reach their pinnacle and are cooking at their very best. So I could go on forever, but I'm thinking about Nico Landenis or Pierre Kaufman or Simon Hopkinson at the Bendham, Alistair Little, going then through to Marco Pierre White, Gordon Ramsay, all of those guys, Marcus Waring, Heston Blumenthal when he came on the scene, and to be privileged to have experienced their food at the very height of their cooking in their flagship restaurant. So that's been a really, really strong memory, and to also see, and to be part of people achieving their dreams, which has been incredibly rewarding and insightful. So yeah, that's a great part of the job. At the same time, you don't always see excellence. You see some poor standards. I was taught from the very beginning in terms of training, you don't tend to look underneath your bed until the morning. Um,
I wonder
uh,
what that is. Yeah.
yeah, but in fairness, I mean, in the 25 years I've been inspecting, the industry has evolved so much. So you think about, and this is the reality of the situation. It was 25 years ago that a lot of places weren't en suite. I mean, I just if you just think about that for a moment, it
Yeah.
feels hard to imagine that. But and pre-internet, etc. Hotels were very different places, and you had, particularly in B&Bs, some awful TARDIS showers in rooms, with an avocado bathroom suites and all of
Oh
those
my,
things.
yes.
But we've come a long, long way to cutting edge hotels now with great tech and superb quality. So, but again, it's been interesting to see that development of hospitality throughout the decades, really, and our food has changed. I mean, again, our country wasn't really renowned for great food, and it's now, I would say, I was at an industry luncheon yesterday. I would comfortably say the UK can hold its own against any other country now on a global stage.
Completely agree. Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about London. And it used to be that, it was only in London you had some great restaurants, and perhaps, Raymond Blanc at Le Manoir, for example, but there really wasn't much else around the country. And then you look now, wherever you go, you've got fantastic restaurants, whether that's Birmingham, Cornwall, Edinburgh, Glasgow, the islands, everywhere you've got quality, and really high quality cooking. And I think we're really blessed now. Our food has never been in better shape, and you look at English wines as well now are fantastic, and not just sparkling. Pinot Noirs are coming on now, so it's really
Yeah.
exciting time for UK gastronomy, I think, and food and wine in general.
5-star hospitality means having the right people in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly where RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud is the online platform that makes planning rotas, recording attendance, and managing annual leave easy. Its simple, drag-and-drop interface lets you create and share rotas with your team in minutes, while our built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. RotaCloud also makes life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request time off, and pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be.
Yeah, and very, as you say, must have been very, very interesting to kind of almost see this growth happen in front of your eyes. And maybe much like, way back at the beginning of your journey, you're not aware of the change within you taking place. You're not aware of the change happening in the moment. But when you're able to reflect back on your time and see the change that has happened, it is quite magnificent how far we've come.
Oh yeah, and I think that's often forgotten. And I think if you take that right up to present day, it's actually, because life is so busy now and business life is so busy. Actually, if you take a moment to stop, pause, and reflect, and actually you go, well, actually you beat yourself up because you think, oh, actually I could do a lot better. But actually, if you start listing the things that you've achieved in a year, it actually builds up. And it's the same for any business, any hotel, or any restaurant. You're always looking ahead, and you could do more. But actually, you could say, well. I mean, last year we have refurbished that, we have recruited new people, we have developed a new kitchen or whatever it might be. You've actually done a lot, but of the nature of hospitality, and we want to keep pushing forward all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it is a really good habit to reflect and pause and actually, acknowledge with your teams what you've actually achieved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also just going to call you out that your kids are obviously absolutely right, because you just said earlier in that conversation that you were at a lunch yesterday. So you're feeding the expectation absolutely there.
Yes.
But yes, well, I mean, I'm going to go back to your journey because I want to talk about your journey through the AA. So you started out as I suppose a classic inspector, as it were.
Yeah, hotel and restaurant inspector. I had the kind of South Coast as my first patch. So that was probably anything from, I guess, Bournemouth right through to West and East Sussex, Channel Islands, Dorset, Hampshire, Sussex, and then going into the home counties a bit from that point of view. So cut my teeth as a hotel and restaurant inspector, was doing probably in excess of 200 visits a year. So really, I mean, I thought that's another thing that a job teaches you. But, having sort of grown up in restaurants and hotels, I thought I knew a reasonable amount about the industry. But actually, until you do an AA job and you see the full breadth and spectrum of the industry, you realize how much bigger industry it is and how different and diverse and independent it is, which was quite an eye-opener for me from that point of view, and some areas I'd never been into or been exposed to. So because I'd come from a sort of country house background, so 5-star hotels in London, for example, was definitely a new experience for me, as was regional restaurants, etc., and some fabulous B&Bs that we have in the scheme. So did that for a while, and just again sort of, my mantra has always been to be a sponge and learn as much as possible and do as much as possible. And from that, I was very fortunate to be promoted into the senior team as a senior inspector. And then I started within the key account section. So that's where we would look after group hotels, developing those relationships, managing those with either managing director, operations director, or chief exec. Then I became the key accounts manager and part of the senior leadership team. And then Albert Hampson, who was with the business for 19 years and effectively running the business, back in 2008 said, "Oh, I'm going to retire. He'd actually done 19 years in the army and 19 years VA, and said it's my time," which came as a surprise.
Can't do that 20th year. That's just no.
And then so the opportunity came up, and I, again, very fortunate to be appointed. So took over the business in 2009, as head, and I've run it ever since. So I had a 2-year time away from EA, but came back 5 years ago. So yeah.
Right. So this is your second stint, but that was everybody's allowed a hiatus, I think, and actually, I think it does people the world of good to have.
Oh, it did me a world of good, actually.
Yeah.
I've done 20 years, and I felt that I'd taken the business to where I could do, and was just keen to do something else, and it was good. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I suppose I want to talk about evolution then, really, as part of this, because there's it feels like for that length of tenure, you must have seen some amount of evolution in the way that things are done. And we obviously talked about at the quality level from a property perspective and the like. That goes without saying. But actually, in the way that you must conduct your business, I would imagine has changed immeasurably in that time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one as originally as an A. I mean, I joined the A when we were non-profit making, through to multiple changes of ownership, through to commercial reality, and then also one of the biggest challenges moving from a pre-internet phase into a digital world, and that's one of the biggest challenges. And obviously, being a publisher, that was a massive change, publishing then into digital. So that remains a challenge, I think, for many businesses. Whereas, how can you move from something that was originally a very print orientated way of doing business through to a digital way, and how do you start to try and commercialize those opportunities? And but that is definitely one of the biggest challenges as we've had as an organization, because everything from an AA scheme point of view used to rely on the book coming out every year, and that was the biggest appeal, whether that's the hotel guide or restaurant guide. And obviously, with internet and digital world and all of that, it clearly moved at a pace online.
Yeah.
Which obviously saw the guidebooks diminish, and then us move into the digital space, and then starting to improve that whole level of feedback that you give from what was ostensibly originally a handwritten report through to something that was digitally produced with then pictures, etc. So things do move on, and the standards move on as well. So we recently simplified the star rating schemes, for example. So we did that back in February together with our colleagues at Visit England. So we've recalibrated the scheme used to run 1 to 5 stars. We've actually recalibrated that now to 3 to 5 stars, because we feel 1 and 2 stars is redundant, both from an industry point of view and also a consumer point of view in terms of need from that point of view. We've got a recalibration of 3 to 5 stars for star rating scheme. We've introduced something called quality assessed in the middle, which is for a growing number of perhaps brands that don't want a star rating but still want the accreditation process and benchmarking and awards that we do. And something I'm really excited about is we've introduced a brand new entry level called Visitor Ready for industry. So, and that came about, so that's been a 2-year process. So during COVID, when obviously the industry was on its knees, we wanted to do something for industry. So we created something called the COVID Confidence Scheme. So we wanted to have an accreditation scheme which would boost consumer confidence when businesses were allowed to reopen. That was tremendously well received. It was completely free to industry. It was what we could do to help industry at its time. And from that, we felt there was a need to have a entry-level compliance scheme, accreditation scheme, completely digital. So again, doesn't require physical visits, etc., but checked by human beings, so it's robust and credible. And what Visitor Ready does is it checks on public and employment liability, on fire risk assessment, on gas mark, and on food hygiene, and a number of other key requirements. And it also gets businesses to sign up to a consumer charter in terms of responding to complaints, etc. And that gives a digital badge. It then creates a digital wallet for those businesses so that they can keep all their documentation in one place. And then the system will then remind them in a year's time, 3 months in advance, that their public liability is coming up to renew, etc. So we're super excited about that new scheme. It's completely free of charge to industry, and actually it's free to all industry as well. So we've recognised that the quality schemes have only sort of touched a small part of industry: hotels, restaurants, B&Bs, campsites, self-catering, and actually there's so much bigger part of industry out there. So in the cohorts of eat, visit and sleep, we've created a scheme which hopefully, any cafe, swimming pool, leisure centre, a farm shop, exclusive use place can apply. You can apply. It won't cost them a single penny. It costs them about 20 minutes if they've got their documentation ready to actually go through the system and to have a credible digital badge which they can share across all digital platforms. So I think that's a great example of how everything's evolved in terms of a fully digital proposition, which is free to industry, and one that it works alongside industry. And again, that's always been our approach. We're a very collaborative and relationship focused style business. So we're very fortunate that all the trade organisations and trade bodies support that new scheme, Visitor Ready. So whether it's UK Hospitality, Institute of Hospitality, HOSPA, Master Inn Holders, PASC, B&B Association, local hotel associations, all supporting, because hopefully it's a force for good for industry to help improve compliance and help continue to boost consumer confidence.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, any of the accreditations at any level, I would imagine, is something that from a consumer perspective builds trust. And you kind of know what you're going to get. Like it's pretty obvious that if it's 5-star, you're looking at the pinnacle of what's available. But I kind of admire the dropping of the 1 and 2 stars, because I think if you're operating at what would perceive to be 1 and 2 star level these days with everything that's available, then maybe got to question why you would be in hospitality in the first place. But that's maybe a discussion for another day. But yeah, I mean, and I love the fact that you've evolved into offering this other piece of collateral for people to jump on board with. That again, if you have that badge, I would imagine is just this little badge of trust that just goes out into the consumer marketplace that says, we're kind of adhering to this benchmark minimum standard, so you can kind of trust it. We'll look after you.
That's our intention. I mean, obviously that flows into a couple of our values in terms of obviously still having a quality agenda. That's really, really important to try and improve places. So hopefully that businesses that get onto Visitor Ready, that might be for some of them a stepping stone to go into the quality accreditation programs, to boost consumer confidence. And I think also, particularly in the digital world where ultimately, as you know, a business can say what they want, they can self-rate, you get loads of online reviews now, which have become polarized to a degree, an important filter without question. But I think the key battleground now is authenticity, particularly with AI and all of those other things coming in. And I think that's hopefully what we offer through our heritage and credibility of having worked with hospitality for so long, that we can bring that to the forefront to benefit industry and consumer to mutual impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Not bad for somebody who was only going to do it for a couple of years.
Yeah. It's funny how life turns out. So yeah,
but I suppose that you've kind of already identified in your journey that there's been a reason. It's not like you've just taken a job and it's easy and that'll do me until I retire kind of thing. There has been a step up. So yeah, I'll stick around and do a couple of years of that, and then another opportunity presented itself. I'll stick around and do another couple of years for that, and then you're kind of, I suppose, the longer you go, the more embedded you are within what they stand for, and they obviously align with your own values as well. And when that happens, what's the need to move on?
Well, exactly, and I think big values for me are trust and integrity. I think that and humility, they're really important factors to me, and I'm very lucky. Not everyone has this journey, but I found something that I fell in love with and have remained passionate since the age of 17 through to now. And I've just been lucky to find that early on, whereas some people find it much later and pivot or get into a career that they really love or follow something that they really, and I do believe that life is too short to do something that you don't enjoy. And that's the problem I never have. I never wake up thinking, oh, I've got to go to work. I love going to work. I love our industry. I love everything about our industry. I love the community that our industry brings. I'm sure you do. Our industry is full of great people, and you feel part of a really big family. So our industry is really big, but actually it's quite small, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And actually, I get involved in a couple of charities within hospitality, which I love to do. And everyone is just so giving and generous. And actually, you do feel like that you are part of a movement, part of a collective that, has generosity at its heart, is caring at its heart, but we have lots of fun at the same time. And I think that's the stickiness of hospitality, right?
Absolutely. You've kind of just written my marketing collateral for the next year of the podcast, to be honest, with that little rally cry at the end. That was the absolutely bang on message. But no, I mean, there's a couple of other things that I just wanted to touch upon, and they're just purely for my own benefit.
Sure.
I think it was just from your notes that you sent over. I just had to call this one out because it made me chuckle when I read it.
Okay.
I ask everybody a question privately. It's really just to get you thinking about the stuff that we might talk about when we come on the show. Nothing is guaranteed that we would get to, but the question was, what are you bad at? And your answer, handwriting.
Oh,
and I didn't see that coming.
I can own that one, Phil, completely. I mean, I often refer my writing to like a GP's writing, if that makes sense. So, and we had a conference this week with the team, and I got chosen to be the scribe for. We have a quiz every year with our conference, and I said, "Are you sure you want me to do the writing? Because the marketing team will not be able to read. I can't read my own writing. Okay, it's that bad." So yeah, I'm definitely be a world champion at that. I'm really confident.
Bad handwriting. What's the opposite of calligraphy? Then that's basically you've just created your own writing style.
My sister's great at calligraphy, actually, but yeah, I don't know. I lose patience with handwriting, and it all becomes a scribble.
Yeah. I do hear you. I can hold this up to the if you can see that. I've got a bit of scrawly as well, and even sometimes I can't read my own handwriting. So
I confess that is definitely something I can definitely own.
Very good. And then the other thing was a story involving carrot and ginger soup.
Oh gosh, yeah. So again, back to my days at the Feathers when I was in the kitchen. I was told to make I was asked to make a carrot and ginger soup, and I was convinced that Sonia had said put all the ginger in it. So that's what I did, and that happened to be 3 roots of ginger. So yeah, you can imagine her reaction when she tasted it. So
it's
she wasn't pleased. Yes.
The soup was fiery, and she was fiery on the back of it as well. Yeah, but it's these little things that I think are also what makes this industry so rich. Yeah, just in terms of the stuff that you can look back on and kind of chuckle at and take learning from at the same time when you're going through it and all of that. And it just happens all of the time. And for me, it's one of the reasons why I'm head over heels in love with this industry. It amazes me the stories that come out of it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I think reflecting back on it, our industry is so great as a learning environment, and it's a very empowering industry because you do have to take responsibility, but you have to accept that, you are going to make mistakes along the way. If you've ever worked in a kitchen or you've ever worked in a restaurant, you're going to spill something. You're gonna muck up the soup right once in a while. So, but what's more important with all of these things is about how you learn from those mistakes and how you learn that and develop that experience. But you've got to make those mistakes in the first place, otherwise you'll never learn. And I always encourage my team. I have a very empowering style, and I just say, you'll make mistakes, but it's the only way you'll learn. And I get people come to me, oh, Simon, I've really made this really bad mistake, and I said, look, let's put some context. No one's died. Okay, we're still all here. That's the key thing. Human first, business second, and then what's gone wrong. And if you talk through it, naturally, and just say, well, let's reflect on this. What would you have done differently, and use it as a positive learning, and then rectify it. And when we're very honest as a business, we don't get things 100% right all the time, and if we don't, we'll put our hand up, but we'll own it, and we'll rectify it, and we'll follow through on it, and we're deeply passionate about doing that, and that's just comes from, I guess, a hospitality spirit that I've learned from over the years. You don't get things right all the time, but it's actually how you recover from those things is far more important than making the mistake in the first place. Because guess what? No one sets out their day thinking, I'm going to make a mistake. You just don't do that, but it's actually how you learn from it.
Yeah, I think you also highlight a really key point of leadership as well, is that actually half of that battle is creating the culture where people feel comfortable to own their mistakes. And they're not hiding them, and they're not trying to skirt around it or for fear of retribution or whatever. And that's a massively important part of building an excellent culture, I think.
Yeah, and I see my job for my team is to actually remove any barriers they've got to actually trying to achieve what they're trying to achieve. So that's often the conversations we have. The first conversation always is, how are you doing today? That's because that's the most important thing for me. Is about how, because you never know what's going through someone's day or life at the time. So that personal check-in is the most important thing for me. And then what's keeping you up at night at the moment? What's troubling you? How can I help you? And we talk about the sort of challenges we might have in the business, and what the solutions might be, and how we might try and overcome those together. And again, it's not feeling that responsibility is all on one person's shoulders, because it's not. There's a whole business responsibility at the end of the day. So no one should feel that pressurized or stressed, because it's just another challenge we've got to try and overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what's keeping me up at night at the moment?
Yeah, what's that then, Phil?
I've just finished Dexter, and I don't know what to watch next.
Are you a binge watcher?
I mean, not really. Not
really. Do it all in one go, or are you patient?
No, we when we find something, we're all in.
Yeah,
but it's rare that we find something that hooks us in. And we just finished that the other week. And then the Euros is keeping me occupied at the moment. But it's like, what do I do after the Euros?
Yeah.
These are real problems, Simon. Real problems.
Real problems.
Dear. Final question before I let you get on your merry way on this wonderful Friday. The future. Is there anything that you could tell us about what's happening next with you guys? What have you got anything planned that you can share, or is it just a constantly in motion?
Yeah, well, I think our biggest law. Obviously, I've mentioned Visit already, and the simplification of the schemes. I mean, that's our biggest development this year, which we're still rolling out and it's being well received by industry. Up and coming is we do a big award event in September for 1,000 people at Grosvenor House. So we've been doing that for 30 years. So that always takes a bit of our time and attention, because we do that ourselves, and we love doing that. We've got Paul Ainsworth doing the menu this year, which we're excited about. Really, I've done the first tasting with Paul in Padstow, and I think it's going to be tremendous. But it's always
was that over a lunch?
Sorry, it is over another lunch. Okay. Maybe the kids are right.
Yeah. Well, they're rarely wrong, right? I mean, you never tell them that in public, but.
Absolutely. But so we love doing the award event. It's a very special atmosphere, close-knit community. And I love that, because industry come together. And as you know, industry is fiercely competitive, but they're the first people to celebrate other people's successes and again, a very collective way. We raise a bit of money for Hospitality Action and Room to Reward, which is great. So that's really, that will take a big part of our focus past summer and into the autumn. From that point of view, obviously, I hope for industry that we do have a bumper summer, because the first quarter has been quite soft with both the weather, cost of living, etc. So from that point of view, we're excited to it's been another positive year so far. So and we just want the whole of the industry to do really well, and hopefully, don't know what our new government's going to look like, what colour it might be, but obviously we just want to make sure that they do all the right things to support our industry, because I truly believe our industry is one of the few industries that can deliver growth. We're the third largest employer anyway. I think it's really interesting to see today's news where there has been slightly more growth than expected. And guess where that's come from? Hospitality.
Indeed.
As well as the industry. So, I think with the right conditions, and there's a couple of pressing challenges that we need to get beyond, with business rates and VAT to make us, more competitive on a global stage. But, we can really accelerate growth for the country, both in terms of investment, turnover, more jobs, and we are at the very heart of one society and industry. We underpin other things industry. And I think sometimes people don't realise how interlinked and dependent hospitality is for so many other parts of our country, and it's a joyous part of the industry as well. We bring fun and social engagement and cultural standing, etc. So it is so important, and I hope we are given the right conditions to actually really fully flourish and deliver.
Here, another wonderful battle cry, and I think the thing that I would always ask anybody to ask themselves about, if you question how important this industry is, beyond the economical impact that it has and the social impact that it can have, is actually just think about your own psychological well-being. If your favorite pub / restaurant / cafe / anywhere where you spend any kind of meaningful time, either on your own, with your loved ones, with your mates, whatever that looks like. Imagine if they're not there. Imagine if they're not part of your life. Then, what impact would that really have? And we kind of got an experience of that, right? A little taste of that in 2020. And everybody just remember that when we were unlocked from being locked down, that everybody was chomping at the bit to get back into their pub, to their restaurant, to wherever it is that they love to hang out. So yeah, there we are. Battle cries galore.
Yeah, and I'll finish on one final thing.
Another thing.
Hospitality is a great career. It should be, perceived as a career of choice because it's a wonderful industry. It's an industry that has no limits for a young individual joining our industry.
Yeah.
You can go in many different paths. You can become a managing director, a CEO, an entrepreneur, a business owner, with transferable skills. And I think that's, again, very unique. And it's an exciting and diverse industry to be involved in.
Hear, hear. That is a wonderful way to wrap it up. Simon, thank you so much. I'm so glad we got there in the end. And I wish you guys all the very best with the next phase. I actually did want to make the point about the awards and how important they are, because these are the moments where we can all take a little breather and just acknowledge excellence, and everybody works their backside off to make their places the best that they can be. And I think these nights are massively, massively important, that we just take stock of how amazing we all are, whether you win or you don't.
Couldn't agree more. I think, we just need to spend more time recognizing how good our industry is. And that might be a small business, a large business, or anything in between. And it's also recognizing the tremendous commitment and hard work that hundreds of thousands of people commit to in their career within hospitality, making sure that people have great, great experiences.
Yeah, superb. Simon, thank you so much. Wish you
Pleasure.
well. And I'll catch you at something soon, I'm sure.
Probably another lunch, Phil.
Probably. Let's do lunch, yeah. Nice one. Take care.
Thanks.
Cheers. And there we have it. What an awesome journey from Simon, showing what can happen when you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and what a super exciting time for AA Media going forward. We'll be back as usual next Wednesday at 8 PM, so have a great week, and I'll see you then.